Welcome back to my reading of Not Guilty, Finding Peace in 3 Simple Steps. I'm Virginia Robin. In the last chapter, which was chapter 1 of this book, it was a short chapter, so I thought I'd just continue on my reading. I talked about that your life is perfect as it is, and that's because you have lived a sum of moments that have defined who you are right now. And that's a perfect representation of you. It's like being an actor in a play. You go in, you play the role. You can choose any role you want. You don't criticize someone on TV for saying, oh, you're acting like the bad guy and that role is no good. We needed that bad guy in the story, right? So just a thought. This is chapter 2. You already know this. And I want to draw your attention to this painting. This one really does represent to me our knowing. Behind her is the world of infinite possibility, the world of full living colour. Yet we're wearing some facade here. And it's not pleasing to us. That's why she's got these tears. Behind her is so much more. And this is what chapter 2 is about. Your knowing. You already know this. My little quote is, you will never follow your own inner voice until you clear up the doubts in your mind, by Roy T. Bennett. Outdoors was the safest place to be, away from the confines of unpredictable adults. Nursing a sense of despair that I later learned was not exclusively designed for 9-year-olds, I sat cross-legged, staring blankly into the innate stillness offered by the concrete floor of our patio. The day was cold and grey. The concrete was cold and grey. Life was cold and grey. At 9, this wasn't a promising forecast. But as a friendly stick beckoned me to join all the fun it could muster in drawing imaginary concrete circles, a thought popped into my tiny mind. I just knew my life one day would offer me a great deal more sunshine than it did at that moment. I recall a sense of comfort that arose within me, and life immediately felt a little better. Why, at 9 years old, would I have that realization? Especially when everything around me offered evidence to the contrary. Back then, of course, I lacked any semblance of maturity to comprehend what I later ascertained to be my knowing. You have your very own knowing too. It's just likely you've forgotten about it or buried it under a pile of they know best. In my teens, my knowing sparked up again during secondary school in art and physics class. Being paths of interest, areas of my life that are lit up as we speak. I experienced flashes of my future life in a large home overlooking the sea whilst in my mid-teens and early 20s. I knew it would be a reassurance of my 9-year-old's feeling that my life was going to be okay. Have you ever experienced that feeling? If so, did you embrace it? Or did you just dismiss it as nonsense? It wasn't until I was 31 that I found myself again challenged by unpredictable adults. These ones appear to be well-meaning. Whilst inconsistent and contradictory, their sage advice was designed to help me be a good parent. What I believed were sound sleep and feeding routines for my then newborn son Ariel were met by them with warnings that my shaping of a future dysfunctional adult would in turn single-handedly find me responsible for society's demise. Clouded by all that doom and gloom, I began to second-guess the parenting decisions I was making. I felt guilty for wanting to parent my way. My knowing decided it was high time I unpacked it and dusted it off for use. At Ariel's 6-week-old checkup, the maternal health nurse counselled me. Mother knows best. Liberation arrived. It seemed I knew best after all. Of course, they continued to judge me, but instead of tucking my knowing away, I remained faithfully guided by it. Whilst I no longer held any real concerns about making decisions in the parenting department, I would continue to be profoundly tested in other areas of my life. Said testing was to bring me some interesting revelations about this knowing of mine. Via curious 6-year-old. If you've ever parented 6-year-olds, you may be aware that they like to ponder the most interesting of things. On the way to school in the car one morning, Ariel wanted to know why his school was imposing a new rule that decreed, "You can't say you can't play." This rule raised concerns for him. It seemed there were kids he simply did not want to play with. "Rules are for idiots" slipped unwittingly from my lips to a 6-year-old. I know. But this line might have turned out to just be some of my very, very best work. Time machines weren't invented back then, so I couldn't change history, and given 6-year-olds remember everything potentially detrimental to parents, a swift yet authentic clarifying statement was needed. I was momentarily lost. Where was my knowing now? Was it afraid of curious 6-year-olds too? Yes. A little internal conflict had surfaced because I was supposed to uphold rules. My day job was a lawyer. Oops. I calmed myself. Then just like that, I knew what I said had felt right to me. Felt right. But why? I contemplated the school rule in question. I understood the sentiment of inclusivity which at first blush seemed loving. It was designed to eliminate playground concerns. Instead, it did the opposite. That rule did the opposite. It created concerns. That's what limiting rules of this type tend to do. 6-year-olds, choose your friends at your peril. They didn't, you mightn't want to be a friend of somebody's. Doesn't mean you're rude or mean to them, but it doesn't mean that you have to be their friend. They were removing a child's ability to decide for themselves. They were exercising the child's knowing. It was at this moment I received first-hand intel on how they take control. No deal. In my view, the reason you're feeling concerned about life is because they, in all their forms, are still imposing their expectations via unwritten and written rules on how you should live. Since you were very small, they've been creating very sneaky little rules that make your decisions for you. We've become unaware that these rules do override our ability to know what we prefer in our lives and to know what authenticity looks like for us. These rules have become unconsciously adopted by you as life's navigation system. They're tricky little beasts because they're disguised as a form of love. Wear this, drive that, become a insert important job description here, be a good parent, partner, and my personal favourite, never ever wear blue and green together. Get it right and you'll be approved of, tick, validated, loved. Get it wrong and you'll be found guilty of badness and banished from society for eternity. While you remain distracted and all tangled up in the making of life's agonising decisions, your little knowing voice whispers from the depths of your being, no, actually, I want to wear blue and green together. Look at me, I've got blue and I'm sitting on a green couch and feeling good. This is your very own knowing softly guiding you. It coaxes you. It says, this is what I want to happen here. Your knowing is the authentic or natural version of you, the you that existed before you were shaped into them. They have taught you to listen to the external guidance imposed by them. It seems they can't trust you, so they taught you not to trust you either. This is a big deal. We've learned not to trust our own guidance, and so we've looked to them instead. Whilst I learned to trust in myself above listening to others, I also learned that guilt and shame are these wonderfully ingrained intellectual creatures that can pull us so easily into the realms of self-deception. Where do you find that you're trusting in the opinions of others? Of course, when we think we've got it all figured out, we just get the right experience to test our mettle. There are reasons for that, which will be explained as you move through the chapters of this book. It wasn't until 2017 that I found myself confronted with a doozy of a dilemma. Given all situations are fortunate and perfect, it taught me that my knowing is really all about knowing myself and my authentic desires very deeply. And they guided me to follow that path. Our knowing guides us to experience certain situations so as to expose where we've been living someone else's life. It's really cool, actually. Great. But we tend to avoid the experiences because they feel unpleasant. What we haven't appreciated is sometimes it takes a roller coaster ride to get you to squeal with delight. Yay! Yeah, grab your popcorn. I'll take you on my own roller coaster ride a little later. Don't worry, it'll show you how messy lives can be fun. The short version is, I understood that the scary downers and dizzying uppers, when fully embraced, are all part of the experience we must have to expand our view of the world. You find great satisfaction when you've overcome what appears to be a crisis. When I began to understand this is all about me, true satisfaction arrived when I learned that every choice I made was within my power alone. My life is my creation solely. Not a lot of people like to hear that. And whilst I could tweak it more toward my preferences, it's still perfect as it is. The reason to see your life as being perfect or satisfying, whatever it looks like right now, is that you will reveal more satisfaction. If there's an idea I would like to impart, it's contained in that previous sentence. Whatever your life looks like right now, acceptance of that will reveal to you more satisfaction. This is an idea you might like to explore in little steps. What can you find total satisfaction with right now? Is it the cup of tea you had this morning? The toast was perfect. The sun might be shining. You had a great night's sleep. Anything. Anything at all will do to invoke that feeling if you can't muster it up yourself. Your natural self already knows this. Your knowing, or the heart of you, holds all the answers you seek. It's a sensation you have, a feeling place. It doesn't operate within the intellect. You cannot know what to do by following their rules. Guilt and shame are the squeaky wheels enticing you, shouting out the rules you must follow, vying for your constant attention. You are being distracted by them. After all, if you start living your own life, they will lose their power. They will kick and scream, trust me. You are a master at this. You've simply forgotten. Can you feel that? Can you feel it? Oh, and so you know, Ariel survived my parenting with his cognitive abilities firmly intact. As I predicted, he also worked out how to sleep in his own bed for the most part. He chose not to follow the rules where they didn't align with him by following his knowing or his heart instead. As a result, he's having a blast, living an independent, insightful, and adventurous life. If you choose to measure success in monetary terms, he's all that too. And the satisfying tip to end off this chapter is knowing how to live life comes naturally to you. You've just forgotten knowing how to live life. That concludes the free chapters of this book. I will be reading more on Substack for paid subscribers, so I hope you join me there. Thanks for listening. Oh, and you can also buy the book on Amazon or any other good book retailer.